Hi everyone, Aiden here with eTrailer. Today we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install this eTrailer Class 3 custom fit trailer hitch receiver on our 2023 Toyota Tacoma. Now this hitch is going to give you a 2" by 2" receiver tube opening, which is going to offer the widest range for different accessories, whether it be a ball mount so you could tow a small trailer with your Tacoma, or some other hitch mounted accessory like a cargo carrier or a bike rack. This is going to be the most versatile and allow you to carry the most types of things. It's also going to be the most capable with a 6,000 pound gross trailer weight rating, that's how much weight it can pull, and a 900 pound maximum tongue weight. That's the maximum downward pressure on the end of the receiver tube. Now it's important to know that if you've got weight distribution on your camper, then that does up the gross trailer weight rating to 8,000 pounds. With all that in mind though, you always want to abide by what your Tacoma is rated for, and if it's rated lower than what that hitch is, check your owner's manual and just go by the lowest rated thing. Now the safety chain loops are a pretty basic loop style welded to the bottom, and they'll accommodate smaller as well as larger clevis style safety chains. And the pin is going to be a standard 5/8 inch diameter pin hole. Now it doesn't include the pin and clip, but you can pick up one here at eTrailer depending on the accessory you choose. Oftentimes they will come with one, bike racks and cargo carriers in particular. Ball mounts, maybe not all the time, so just keep that in mind and maybe consider picking up a locking one if you need it. Some measurements to keep in mind here. From the ground to the top inside edge of that receiver tube opening is going to be 18 inches, and that'll let you know what kind of rise or drop you need if you did get a ball mount. That way you can tow your trailer level. And from the center of the hitch pin hole to the closest edge of the vehicle, right here on the bumper, is going to be 3.5 inches. That's important to know for any folding accessories like a bike rack or a cargo carrier. If you're going to have clearance from this outermost point on the vehicle to have that fold there and not make contact. That 3.5 inch mark is going to be pretty good, so I don't think you'll run into too many issues, but be sure to check our vehicle specific test fits on the pages for those bike racks and cargo carriers to see if we've tested it on your Tacoma and see if it works. And with all that in mind, I think it's going to be a really straightforward install. Definitely one of those ones you can do just in your driveway, really just with one extra set of hands to help lift the hitch when the time comes, but for the most part, you can do it yourself. And we'll walk you through that process of what that looks like right now. Now the first step of your installation is probably going to be the most difficult, which seems a bit goofy because it's just running a fish wire through this frame here and feeding a carriage bolt through. So it's pretty straightforward, but it's just a tight space. So up top, you're going to have this center hole here and two on either side of it. Those are going to be our holes that we're working with. So take your fish wire, feed the threaded end up through. You'll see we already have one side done. And just feed it all the way through that bumper support till it feeds out the other side. And right here is the access hole that it's going to feed out of. You can see it's more than long enough. And you want to take your spacer block and your carriage bolt, thread it on, and feed those in. But it's important to know you're going to need to feed that spacer block in a very particular orientation because it's a very large block and limited space to work in there. So feed the short end in first. When you've got those fed in, just start pulling through gently. And normally you'd be able to pull that carriage bolt down through, but because this tube here is so short relative to the height of the carriage bolt, you're gonna need to grab something like a screwdriver, kind of poke at the spacer block, trying to tilt one end up, and pull that carriage bolt down through. Now, you could be sitting there messing with this for a long time. We certainly messed with the other one for a long time, so the fact that this one popped through so quickly, I think is just a testament to that trick. But just know that you might be messing with it in your driveway for a little bit. But once that's done, that's probably gonna be the hardest part. Now you can grab a friend and get ready to lift the hitch. Now one thing you can do before you grab that extra set of hands though is take your hardware, a bolt with a conical tooth washer, teeth facing up, and go over to some threaded holes on your frame and just try to thread these in by hand. Now, our truck today is pretty new, very low miles, and this all threads in by hand pretty smooth. But if your truck is older, these holes are exposed, and depending on where you live, they could be pretty gunked up. So if you need to, take a tube brush and some penetrating oil, clean them out, and then test them before you start lifting that hitch, especially if you're doing this on the ground in your driveway. You don't want that hitch kind of coming down on top of you while you're laying down and not be able to thread the hardware in. We're gonna feed those fish wires down through the holes on top of our receiver tube. Lift it up into place and get those holes on the hitch aligned with the weld nuts on the frame. And just get one started by hand on either side so the hitch will hold itself in position. Now, once the bolts are up through all the weld nuts and the hitch is holding itself up for us, we can turn our attention to the flange nuts. That'll go thread on to the carriage bolts from earlier. Again, we're just gonna get this hand tight so that all the hardware is hand tight, and we'll come back through, snug down all of this with a wrench or an impact. These ones that are located just above the cross tube for the hitch, we're not gonna be able to get an impact on, so we'll need a ratcheting wrench or a ratchet and socket for that. But tighten it all up, and once it's all snug, we can torque it to the specs in our instructions. Now, once you have one piece of hardware torqued down, just repeat that process for all the other pieces. And if you don't have a torque wrench, you can pick up one here at eTrailer, or generally check one out or rent one from a local auto parts store. And once you've made sure that everything's torqued down, you're done. Overall, the installation process is pretty straightforward. Once you know the trick for getting those carriage bolts through, the rest is really easy. And you've got yourself a nice and functional Class 3 hitch for your 2023 Toyota Tacoma. Thanks for watching.